Yeah, it is recorded. It's a little bit exceptional that we have that the invitation was not going out to the many people. So we are not many people anyway. But so it's on the one hand, it's meant to be kind of internal meeting where we are standing, where we are going. At the same time, the topic was developed, it emerged from some discussions we have had before with you and with other, that actually we are facing now with Trump supposedly a very new era. And I say supposedly because I attended, well, at this first time administration, I attended a psychiatrist actually in Munich by accident. I had been there, and he said the problem is not Trump. He may be mad or whatsoever, but the problem is really the population that they vote for him. And today we have again this Trump orientation. Perhaps you can have a key avoidance that we should not really speak mainly about Trump. There is, I think, important point that is frequently forgotten, that there's a certain continuity. What Trump does is an extreme of many measures that we know since years, since basically Reagan and all this, what's going on. But Cuba, I wouldn't say necessarily warmongering, but at least not really the peace orientation. Even if Trump now claims that he should get the Nobel Prize for Peace because he was doing everything to make peace. So I think that is something what we should not forget. It is not entirely new. What he does is a continuation of what we know since many years. It is an extreme, and the extreme is becoming especially clear on the one hand, closure of borders, meaning external borders, especially to Mexico. On the other hand, the orientation on internal borders, meaning extreme segregation and discrimination of certain groups, and then at the same time expansionist politics. I'm sitting near to one of the borders where he wants to say actually Greenland should be ours. And it is, and this is important, I think it's not really the question of Greenland, of the territory, but it is the idea of coming back, re-establishing the hegemonic position of the United States. And it is a clear definition of this, what is called then Make America Great Again. This is one point, but we always or frequently forget that this is the same position in a way, extreme, and of course, because of his position or the American position, brought again forward. If you look at the Munich Security Conference, the Davos meeting of the World Economic Forum, we have very much the same positions here. And I was actually listening to our Prime Minister here from Denmark. He had been on a panel with the Finnish president or whatever. And this was basically the same: make Europe strong again, make Europe great again. Against now, of course, the United States, because first it was, okay, we are the West against the East. And now it is this split in between. So closure, expansion, and oppression as a kind of trinity. Now, is that really the entire problem? And there are psychological problems. There are psychological problems as well, the voters for him. And I think it's, in my perception, it's increasingly a problem if you look at Merz, the Danish prime minister, and during the Security Conference in Munich, you have an extreme, I think it's really an extreme readiness to go to war at the end, and to have not MAGA, but MEGA, make Europe great again. We have to resist. We are the strong power. There was I mentioned this in one of the blog posts by Rubio, this comment, we are actually the better Europeans in America. So whatever we do, the aggression and is basically to defend European values. That's interesting. And in law, we have this old discussion about is and ought. There's another dimension to it. I think that's the can. Can we do in objective terms, and this is important then for human rights especially, what can we do in objective terms? Is it possible? And what can we do if it comes to legitimation? And there we come to psychological problems, I think, of a value shift, really, that is happening in a way comparable with the shift Reagan, Thatcher, and Co. I think what we often overlook, ignore consciously or not, this extreme right, if we wanted to use this term, Le Pen in France, the right wing in Italy, in Germany, and Trump, they have some points. We cannot simply say, well, everything is fine, and whatever they criticize, this is just rubbish. They make certain points in terms of overregulation, in terms of an economy that is going down, in terms of Europe and or America not maintaining their hegemonic position. This is simply objectively true. Whatever we think about it, if they should worry about it, or if they should say, well, this is the kind of history. But these are points where it is at least in terms of politics, in terms of politics and policies, people have a point, and this is as well the right wing has a point. This is the situation I think we face, and this makes it possible then for the moderate right, if you want, the Christian Democrats in Germany or whatsoever, to say, actually, we address these points in order to be the better right, to take the votes from the extreme right. It's a funny thing, or not so funny, really. And I think it is interesting that we speak in the United States, and there we come to politics, we speak now of the Trump administration, and we speak of the administration of the government, which means it's really already a tradition that it is a control of the entire polity, if you want. You can influence the highest courts, you can kick people around. And if there's a change of government, the entire staff, well, not the entire, but they are worrying about their jobs. I think it is telling. Now, the ought dimension, the so-called populism, it is make America great again. And what I said before, it's making Europe great again. And it is as well within Europe now, make Germany, make France, make Italy great again. So a re-nationalist organization. And then, of course, this something people worry, and people means the population worries about it, and it means the administration worries about it, this greatness. European countries, America, there was this position of hegemony. And this is now if you look at global the global structure, it is something for them worrying, and as well for the people worrying. I remember the debate in France, where actually was from the communist movement. We have had a kind of anti-globalist approach. There are threatening our employment statistics, employment situation. They are putting pressure on our economy. This was in the 1990s and 2000s. Objectively, it is something, and where this coming from the tradition, it ought to be great again. We should maintain our position or regain it. And I think that one important point is looking at the United States and to some extent to Europe. Maybe we can say it had been a mistake with Bretton Woods, but it's still a hegemonic dollar. The dollar is the world currency. It is still the case. They can print whatever money they want. They don't have to back it in real terms. But if you look at the entire economy, they cannot simply maintain it. You have inflation, you have the problems with income, and there is a link. You can, to some extent, you can decouple the dollar development internationally, but nationally you cannot, which means that America, the United States, are in a serious economic crisis, and they try to get out of it, meaning they have to, if to maintain or to regain their legitimation as country. So this is something important. The real economy still counts. Now the can, and there I'm actually in trouble looking at the information I have and in terms of the legitimation dimension, I think there it is exactly what I said. We are in a mess, and I promise you we have to get out of it. Now, the problem is, if you look at the United States, if you look at Germany, if you look at France, Italy, other countries, I don't know actually today the situation in Ireland, but there is, we promise you something, we promise you to get out of this misery. It works as long as it works, meaning as long as you have the figures and they manipulate figures in terms of the crisis and. This is, of course, a personal thing that I promise you that everything will be fine, everything will be good. Take perhaps a year or whatever, then we are coming back and everything is sorted. Now, the problem is that we have had, if you look back long enough, we have had real industries, car manufacturing, and which was a sound economic basis. Then we have had the finance markets, which had been seemingly sound basis. But now you have the challenge, actually, that the new economic sectors, meaning what is called or known as Silicon Valley, what is the GAFA, and these economies are not producing anything at the end of the day. And it is relatively easy on the international market, but as well on the national market. You have on the one hand these monopolies or oligopoles that maintain a certain position, but it is increasingly becoming clear that they cannot maintain it. You have now the discussion artificial intelligence as the next .com bubble that is not possible to maintain. We have a huge problem when it comes now to artificial intelligence. ChatGPT is basically, it is a bubble. it always had been a bubble. They are producing something, but they are producing, basically, they are digging their own hole where they will end up. And this is something where I have to admit I cannot really assess the situation, how long this can be maintained. We saw this with the housing sector, with the financial crisis. It was a pretty long time that it could be maintained. If this comes to a crash, and then we have this aggressive politics against China, of course, against Mexico, Latin America, what happened in Venezuela, against African countries, Iran, Near East, so-called. Then I'm wondering what is going to happen there. And I had been for a long time saying, well, nothing will happen at the end, everything will be good. I'm not convinced that we can maintain this if we are not able to really to develop a strong counterpower as well. And I think this is important in economic terms, to develop a sound economic basis that allows to to have a sustainable, if you have a sustainable economic basis. That's where I said I'm myself not in a mess, but I do not have sufficient information, because this is one point in political terms that the support for the Trump administration, especially, but as well what I see now in Germany, the car manufacturers, and then you have the support of Silicon Valley, then they draw back, and I think they lost ground to a large extent. And how to address this, I don't know. I don't know how long this will be last, how long it will, or in which direction it will go at the end. And perhaps we can discuss this, or you can enlighten me there. In terms of human rights, just to come to the end, it is, I think, as well, to concentrate, to focus really more on, it's not Trump. He is mad, okay, or not, I don't know. But this is one person, but it's really the entire shape of the politics and policies. And it is a kind of global process where we have this geopolitical confrontation. How to solve this? Perhaps it is really then a development where we have to say there are human rights, which we claim against the United States, instead of saying now we go the same direction and answer with the same means as he uses. So I hope you have the answer to my questions. Thank you.
So may I? Yeah. Peter, I'm afraid I cannot answer your question, but I have kind of like follow-up reflections upon your statement. So after read your blog, and it's very coincidentally, maybe because of the wide coverage of the Munich Security Conference. I don't know why. Yes, so in the Chinese social media, we can easily find that the Rubio's presentation, even the whole one, the full presentation, and so I think this is kind of like the so-called unavoidable to reflect upon his talk. Also, maybe because this talk takes place in Europe, particularly in Germany. several days ago, we talked about Westphalia's treaty. You know, I don't know whether I have pronounced it correctly, right? So this treaty, they actually they uphold the international principle, the international law principles. So like the the sovereignty, and also the equality. So and also mutual respect, and also including the respect, the mutual respect of the nation state. So those things, those principles are are deeply rooted in the today's international orders. But what the Rubio's talk now really confuses us. I was kind of like also stayed in European countries, and I have a kind of like a sense of Western civilization. But now it makes me really reflect upon his talk, and also particularly Rubio's his talk about like the civilization, the so-called revival of Western civilization. I think this is kind of like the paradox. So I would like to to make it more specific. So Rubio, when he presented, he talked about the American having the European rules, and also just now Peter also mentioned that, and he said that U.S. is basically the real Europe, right? So he uses this idea to explain why now the Trump administration, so why does what it does. So they also imposed like this kind of like tariff on trade and focusing on America first. So I think some people say that these policies are random, but I don't think so. These policies, looking from the strategies, it seems that these policies are not random choices. Now, as Rubio said, they are protecting that. They are doing so just to protect the traditional Western values. So, but this argument, let's think that for just a second. It seems that his arguments, he tries to connect the foreign policy, the Trump administration foreign policy with their history, particularly the Western civilization. I think this kind of like these arguments really kind of like rest upon a selective interpretation of history. So recently, many scholars, they are using a new term to describe Trump administration foreign policy. The new term is called predatory hegemony. So it is kind of like the essence is hegemony, but it is defined as predatory. So this term is used to define the essence of Trump administration foreign policy as like one country treats every deal with other countries as a win-lose game, not win-win game. It's win-lose game. So this goal means that it means that if I need to win, I would to win more than you every single time. So this goes against the traditional or the kind of like the idea that let's all do it together. Let's all do it well together. So now it turns to I would like to win more. Long ago, there's this kind of like this speak, the Trump administration, so we are winning more than ever. So this is used to describe what is the goal of the foreign policy. So this approach obviously changes how the countries, they need to, get along with each other. And now the trust breaks down and the cooperation is getting even harder than ever. So now the critical question emerges. So I'm thinking about, so can such a civilizational revival genuinely be achieved through mechanisms that fundamentally contradict the values that the civilization's claims to uphold? This is kind of like a paradox. So let's go back to a little bit about the history. So what is known as the traditional Western civilization? And after Second World War, Europe, they have seen like so many countries, powerful countries, they're pushing each other around. So European leaders, they built a different kind of a system. So which means that every country need to respect each other and trust each other as equals. So these over time, these grow bigger and also become like the widely respected ideas, which is kind of like embodied in areas such as free trade and also the environmental protection, like the green industry, and also the protection of refugees' rights. So the whole point here, or the basic principle here, is to avoid going back to the old days, where stronger nations, they just took what they wanted. But now, so Trump administrations, the so-called MAGA, Make America Great Again, this movement, now they want to, extend to make make Western great again, make Western civilization greater again. So they are talking about they need to bring back European civilization. But what they did seems goes against the Western civilization, although they are trying to define it in a different way. They're trying to define in another way. So, but what we can see is that they are trying to, they're doing a lot of things that is trying to tear down the rules that the Europeans themselves have created before. So that's the paradox. Yeah, so this is what I have. I want to go back to the history and to trying to close to connect it with the now the foreign policy, and also to the so-called today's the European the America talk took place in Munich. History, of course, they can give us a clue here, but I think that the real question here, what the American Trump administration they are trying to claim is that they claim that the Americans they have the European rules. Yes, I think it does, because we know the history, right? Yeah, the rules is like the can be embedded in the culture and also history and even also the genes. But the question is that what kind of European legacy to follow? So we know the legacy, the real legacy is that the cooperative rule-based order that emerged, that took place after 1945, after the Second World War. But now it seems that we have to reject it all. So, so we can see how American they act now will determine what kind of European civilization. And the real European civilization actually represent. So I think this kind of like that paradox here makes us to think about it. And I mean that what I would say that the real idea or the real concept or the connotation of Western civilization matters for everyone. It's not for just for the Rubio, Trump, or other some certain kind of like American people. Yeah, so I would like to not go further. I stop here. I also do not have an answer to that. Peter, maybe we could pose this question to Joe.
Yeah,
Joe from the
thanks.
European periphery.
From the European periphery, yeah. By the way, I'm just aware nobody said hello to Naima yet. Naima, nice to have you along, just in case you're feeling neglected.
Yeah, hi. No, I'm not.
I'm getting a message saying turn off my video for better quality, so I'm just going to turn off my video. I turned off my video. It's just, hopefully you can hear me a little bit better.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Yua. Yeah, just my own kind of comments, which are just additional to what has been already said. Really, I think one of the things that is worth emphasizing with that whole Western right-wing drift, whether you want to call it populist, is two separate strands. One is a strong assertion of nationalism, national economic interests, national political interests, so country specific, and that undercuts or goes against universalist values and international human rights and a variety of treaties as well, potentially. But the other, in addition to nationalism, it's the ethno nationalism. There's an additional strand in many of these discourses and political speeches and interventions, which is about the highlighting the supremacy or the value of often in the States, and like Rubio's speech about white Western civilization. There's an implicit racial ethnic kind of a preference, and I think that's what Rubio and Vance in their interventions in Europe, that's what the coded message was. You have this white civilization in Western Europe, and it's being quote unquote swamped by migration, and it's migration from non-white countries, that kind of ideology and racism. So for one, if you think of constructing insiders and outsiders, one framework is the nationalist framework. So you've got make Europe great again or make USA great again, and that's USA versus the rest, for example. But another separate insider outsider is white Christian civilization as opposed to the other. And again, that would allow Rubio and Vance to come to Europe and somehow find common cause with right-wingers and racists and extreme right-wingers in Europe under the banner not of the nation state, because there are different nation states, but under the supposed banner of white Christian Western civilization. So I think that ethno-nationalism, those two separate strands, are worth highlighting, and their connection can explain some of the what Rubio and Vance can lecture Europe about. My second point. Can people still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My second point is a different point, and it's about what to make of, especially what's happened in the United States with under the successive Trump administrations, and it's about how scholarship, and how radical scholarship, and how Marxist scholarship can make sense of that. And for I think for many years the standard, there are different Marxist theories of the state, but typically the formulation, I think, in the Communist Manifesto by Marx and Engels was the state as a committee for managing the common affairs of the whole bourgeoisie. And I think sometimes that in Marxist analysis that was applied to the role of the United States in the international state system. It was kind of the guarantor of capitalism worldwide. It underpinned that. So I think there's a big challenge for orthodox Marxist interpretations, for when you've got someone who's unorthodox in their political policy and their economic policy in lots of ways. It's not clear how the standard Marxist state analysis applies to these new developments. And I suppose the third point, it's to finish, again, in terms of interpretation of current events, it depends on how you see past events having unfolded. I'm thinking of Marxist and leftist political forces have typically been very skeptical of, human rights claims and values claims of capitalist countries. And I'm thinking I'm thinking of Gandhi's remark when he was asked what he thought of Western civilization. Mahatma Gandhi's famous quip. He said, he was asked what he thought of Western civilization, and he replied, "I think it would be a good idea." Meaning, what we have now isn't civilized at all. It would be good if those norms were implemented, but they haven't been. So again, I think it goes back to what Peter was saying then, the extent to which it's a matter of difficult interpretation. We must avoid, here's a fourth avoid, the idea that before everything America was upheld international law and it was a good pupil, and now suddenly it's no longer the case. So we need to kind of problematize that assumption. Anyway, sorry, I've talked for too long, excuse me.
I don't think it's too long.
Me neither. I expect more.
Yeah,
more precise. The second point and then the third, maybe the fourth.
but I'm wondering really the tradition. I agree with you. We have to look. We must look back at the history. But I would go a little bit further. 45 was an exceptional situation where some compromise had been made, securing the dominance of France, not least. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have done this against Germany, because Germany, that was the First World War, it was the Second World War. It was not, of course, Germany, but Germany was one of the major driving forces. If we look further back, and now it comes to some kind of cliche, but yes, the America had been the better Europe. The immigrants from from England, Scotland, Mayflower, all this had been securing the liberal market economy. That was easier to emigrate than to stay in England. Now, as I said, cliché, the criminals went to Australia. The good Europeans went to the United States.
That would be the Irish, yeah.
Well, you went to the Irish.
I stayed, you know, my ancestors stayed, so we were
All right, okay.
We were law abiding.
I see. But if you look really back into the European history, it had been a highly individualist approach against the feudal system, which was at that stage revolutionary. But if you look at Descartes, if you look at Kant, of course, if you look at all these, Rousseau, this was at the time really revolutionary, but it was highly individualist. And this is this, and you mentioned Christianity. The Christianity was always going to crusades and killing people, masses of people, because we are the good ones. In the name of God, we can speak whatever we do. And this is justified. And I think in this way, Rubio is actually correct, absolutely. He does, they do in a more explicit way this individualist power orientation of peace. We are the peaceful country. We are the wealthy country. We are the wealth of the nation. Ricardo was an explicitly nationalist orientation. And this is, I think, very important to keep this in mind as a continuation. And there was never, ever, and you mentioned Europe, and I had been engaged there, and I always supported this European idea. But whatever the good out of Europe was always a struggle against this kind of dominance. You have had, actually, or you still have in the European treaties, a special role for the churches, for the Christian churches, which is not justified in any way. But this is yes, it is a certain tradition that is maintained, and it is this power struggle between especially France and Germany, and the UK stepped out because they couldn't maintain their position. And I think in this way, this what's forgotten in many cases, I think the differentiation between the citoyen and the bourgeois. The bourgeois was a capitalist maintaining or gaining power. The citoyen was liberal, but it was possible on the foundation of actually we are the better ones. We are liberal. We are accepting because we are the better ones anyway. Everybody knows this. As long as you accept this, we accept that you have some liberty, some freedom. Otherwise, we don't expect this. And I think this is an important point in European history that is still there. If you look today at debates there in the European Parliament, or coming back to something which I thought actually shocking, especially shocking. I didn't expect anything else from Merz or from Söder or from these people. But listening to the Finnish and to the whole Prime Minister in Denmark, I think this was shocking, that it maintained actually, or that it brought onto the agenda a strange way of make Europe great again, and then the United States are accepted as a German. But we have the responsibility to defend European values, especially against Russia. That was the main thing, Russia-Ukrainian war, and the readiness, the easy going arguments we have to kind of ridiculous competition that we invest in militarization. If this is, I think, paradox. We invest in another paradox. We invest in the weapons, but the time it takes that they are produced, we are gone. If it really comes to the point that, in this case, Putin would say, well, we capture Europe, as well in the United States. If they want to go to Greenland, there is no chance that current investment in weapons in war machinery helps. But this was the readiness. We are there, we are strong, and we have to defend our European values. What's the point if you can't defend these values with violence? And then coming to other points there, briefly at the end, only pointing out the economy on the global market, everything that is actually coming from outside, the tariffs now with the United States, but it's as well, we have to protect our European economy. And then, of course, in Europe, the German economy, the French economy, and then, as I said, even the French Communist Party, we discussed about, I think, in a problematic way, with European defense.